In the fourth and final instalment of our 2021 Income Protection Roundtable, our panel reflects on whether their glass is half full or half empty when it comes to the future prospects for retail life insurance advice. And while everyone's on the same page about their desire for a thriving retail life insurance advice sector, there's a difference in opinion about the extent to which this is going to happen in the future. With regard to the future for risk advice in particular, for the perpetuation of the specialist risk advisor, for the perpetuation of retail advised life insurance advice. How's your glass going there, Phil?
Well, I think we've seen a pattern of risk specialists continuing to become the dominant way. And I think if you talk to the life insurers, they're saying that they're dealing with less and less people doing the bulk of the business. You know, the Pareto principle of 20% do 80% of the business. I think it's very much the case with life insurance advice. We're seeing generalists step back from it or outsource it. So I think whilst we've still got very strong demand and there's all these things that have been happening recently that increase the sense of need for life insurance advice, you know, whether it's the pandemic or it's growth in house prices and people getting more in debt. There's all these reasons why people need life insurance advice. So I think the future is actually really strong for client demand, but it's a question of whether you can deliver it in an economic manner and you can cope with the complexity of it. So I think that there's going to be a segment that will excel, but I think we'll probably see that declining over time. I'm not really optimistic about new entrants to the market saying, pick me, I want to be a risk advisor. I think, you know, having gone through the full degree, they'll probably head down more of a generalist or a financial planning path. So we're going to have to work very hard to keep that community of risk specialists strong and make sure that we have a viable life insurance advice sector that continues.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Phil. So if I can go around the table, as it were, to perhaps ask you all to reflect on the future, the glass half full or glass half empty when it comes to the future for life insurance advice, for life insurance sustainability, and any other final comments you want to make. Adam, I'm going to finish off with you. As our sponsor, you'll have the last word. But David, only because you're at the top of my screen, I was wondering if you've got anything that you've left unsaid or any observations about the future.
Look, I think at the moment we're probably at the bottom end of our insurance that I can see in my 30 plus years being in the industry. But I can only see the need for advice become stronger. The need for a risk specialist become stronger. I think we'll go back in history and find out that those that had their risk specialist in their office or those that were passing on their business to a risk specialist will re-emerge because it is a specialist area. In regards to new entrants, I agree with Phil that may be a difficulty in getting new entrants in. Sustainability, I think we are at, I call it ground zero with sustainability and these new products. So I think in the future, those products will continue to build. Probably not to the extent of what they were a few weeks ago, but they will continue to build, but become sustainable. That's where I see it. And I think for insurers and product providers and the likes, it's an education to advisors. It's an education. A lot of us on this call have got an enormous amount of experience on insurance and know what it was like in the rear vision mirror. It had these three-tiered definitions, all these bells and whistles. But your average brand new client doesn't know what it was like. And it's about educating the advisors to look a little bit more forward, that most people don't know what the agreed value was or how it looked like. These are the products today. And I think we can take a little bit more comfort that the pricing won't be as much as an issue as what it's been in the last 5 years.
All right, thank you, David. Just something you said right at the beginning of those remarks about you think there's a growing need for advice, for risk advice. Has that need not always been there? Do you think there really is a growing need? And do you mean that the consumer, the client, is more open to talking about life insurance advice in the future?
Well, maybe I retract a little bit of that, but yes, I think there is a need for more advice. However, they'll receive it in different sources, whether it's through social media, the internet. I really believe the advised network, to make it sustainable, they would need to charge a fee for service, even though I'm opposed to commissions.
So that's
I'm opposed to fee for service.
Sorry, mate. Go.
No, I said even though I'm opposed to charging a fee for service for insurance, I think that's the only way it's going to work.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to reflect. I think, Eugene, you said that you speculate about there might be more direct conversations about life insurance in the future. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, I did. So I think the only optimistic thing I can say, sadly, is that if you do want to be an insurance specialist and you commit to that, there's probably a huge opportunity, because I think the vast majority of advisors are going to move away from that unless they have to. But from a consumer point of view, I think accessibility is going to continue to get worse and worse unless they increase insurance commission rates. But even there, you've also got compliance requirements that have become more difficult, more onerous, and these IP changes and probably other changes that will happen just makes it more time consuming to give advice on insurance. So essentially, look, it's not that I'm against fee for service for insurance. I just don't think it's a very sustainable model unless you're dealing with medium and high net income earners, medium and high net worth people. They're the only people generally that like to pay for things, like to pay for advice. So unless you're really good at selling your value proposition. So yeah, I don't have a very good outlook from a consumer point of view. And I think a lot of consumers who want insurance will go and buy something directly, as David said, off the internet. Potentially the only opportunity is a general advice model around insurance, where you don't give personal advice, you give general product advice and help with implementation. Because look, the advice part is very, very important, but I think what's equally important, particularly with insurance, is getting the right product for the right client. Can you do that on a general advice basis? I don't know. It's not an area we do much in, general advice. So really hard. And a lot of clients are going to end up buying products without advice that aren't fit for purpose for them, and it won't be a good outcome. But it's kind of out of our control. That's something for government to consider. And I agree with what Phil said about new entrants. Too hard. It's hard enough. I don't know why you'd want to go into financial planning if you're a person outside the industry looking and thinking about your future. So much uncertainty, so much difficulties. Professionalization is a good story, but you want to go into a profession, after spending 3 or 4 years at uni plus a professional year, it's got some stability. We don't have that. We've just been. Red October was only one example, and then FDS and consent, and then a lot of these legislations will probably change again next year because most of them are too onerous. So there's a lot of work to do if you want to attract good new people into our sector.
All right. So to summarise, I think I'm not out of line if I classify your remarks there as more glass half empty than glass half full with regard to the future, Eugene. What is there a thing? Is there something? What can turn it around? What would make your glass half full?
A few things have to turn around. Look, some relief around compliance. You've got to reduce the number of hours it takes to give a piece of advice. That's the simplest way I can put it. You can't stop the market from changing product features, I don't think. I think even though it adds complexity, potentially it's not a bad thing that different product providers do what they think the market wants, I suppose. I'm not a techie, so I don't have a good enough knowledge of all the changes to be able to really comment on that. But yeah, I think that's, and look, the commission side of it is an important part of it too. I think it's very difficult to give insurance advice. It's very important, and it's not really that feasible to charge fees for it. So if you want to make the advice accessible, there's got to be a funding mechanism for it. And
all right, so we're talking about simplifying the advice process and appropriate remuneration when it comes to life insurance.
That would go a long way. That would go a long way.
All right, thank you very much, Eugene. And in thanking you, was there any other final comments that you have left unsaid that you want to make?
No, I think I've said it.
Right, we'll roll on. Thank you, Eugene. Leah, any final observations from you?
Yeah, look, I think I'm cautiously optimistic about the changes that have come through. I perhaps don't have the experience in the industry as some of the other panel members, if that's a diplomatic way to say it. And but the only constant I've seen in the industry is change. So things are always changing. We've got to adapt to it. But I think advisors are better at that now than they've ever been. Technology is helping with that. I don't think we're in danger of technology replacing advisors or power planners. We certainly have a role. Clients still want to talk to someone in person. And there's certainly value there in the education and the financial literacy that Catherine touched on. And so there's plenty of opportunities there, but I think advisors need to be proactive in chasing those and finding those efficiencies, those 1%ers, and there's room for a successful business, both for power planners and for advisors. There's still the need for advice. There's no doubt about that. So from a new entrants perspective, I think it's interesting that no one's looking within their offices. So I certainly didn't choose financial advice. I fell into it and worked my way up through from an admin role, CSO, power planning, briefly did advice as an associate and came back to power planning. And certainly I think with more flexibility in the workplaces now, that's one positive that's come out of COVID. We've managed to avoid saying that so far, but there's people are more willing to study that you can balance work and study and personal life a lot more effectively now than you can in the past. So I would be looking at your power planners and your admin staff and looking if that's something that they're considering or would be willing to consider in their future. So they're, I think, the ideal candidate for new advisors already in your office to do the professional year. They understand how you work, and that's where I would be looking. Obviously, I'm not an advisor, so I don't have to worry about it. But I think that's a huge opportunity there, and it's something that's not been discussed a lot yet. So I'd be curious to see if there's some more interest in those groups than in outside groups where they don't have experience with the industry and they're seeing a lot of negative press in the last few years. So
sure, and that's one great solution for incoming advisors or for the source of new financial advisors, and hopefully with specialist advisors as well. It occurs to me the panel has a view on what they would like to see happen in the future, but there's a divergence of opinion on what will happen in the future, I suppose. So we're not talking at cross purposes. The panel just seems to have an array of views about what will happen. So now, where are we going? We're going to go with you, Phil, for any final comments that you'd like to make. And I think Catherine and Andrew, we come to you after that, and then we'll finish off with Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I guess I've had a pretty good go already. I listened to what everyone has said so far about the future. I think ultimately it will re-emerge as a well-recognised profession, because there is no other role that can get as close to clients and can add as much value, not just from a financial sense, but from an emotional sense and a behavioural sense. So ultimately, I think the future of financial advice will be strong, but we've gone through a very difficult phase, and the number of people who are actively involved has fallen by literally 10,000 in the course of 3 years. We've still got challenges in front of us with getting people through the exam and getting through the education standard. As long as the demand stays, and the demand will stay and it will grow, and the Parliament will reflect upon the fact that here is a valuable service that can only be provided to a large group of Australians if it can be made more efficient and the cost of it can be brought down. So I think there's all those incentives to make sure that financial advice will re-emerge and will be recognised as a leading profession, and advisors will continue to do great things for their clients. So I remain optimistic about the future, but I'm realistic about the current time and the next few years.
All right, very good, Phil. Thank you for that optimistic and realistic. Catherine, how does that accord with you?
I share Phil's sentiments quite a bit. I have a positive outlook for the future of my business, the future of the life insurance industry, but I'm not blind to the fact that we're not without pain. We've experienced a lot. There is likely more to come, but I think it will come out on the other side. And those who can transition and adapt and find ways to be efficient, understand their offering, where their value point is, those businesses that come out of the other side will do quite well. There are a lot of headwinds with the new entrants and aspects. For someone like myself, I've got a few years before I retire yet. So I think there will be different pressures on different segments of the advice market, depending on where you are in your career, your intentions for the future, on top of all the education requirements. One of the comments I think it's important to make in terms of what Australians in general are expecting from their advisors, I think that's evolving too, as well as what we look at in terms of where we get our clients from. I would have said that 10 years ago, my client sources were key referral partners and physical face-to-face meetings, whereas I would say mine is more, 80% is digitally. I receive my clients from that side of things, and I'm finding the younger generations are very, very keen to be educated. They're more savvy because of issues like the Royal Commission. They're not taking things on blind faith anymore, and they want to be educated, but they come more committed. So if we keep on doing the things as we've always done them, it's going to continue to be challenging with the extra headwinds. But if people can adapt and focus on, rather than looking at the challenges as something to be exhausted or defeated by looking to be creative and then getting involved with your local members of a parliament, your advice associations, and proactively taking steps, I think that will benefit all of us, the entire industry, and that will all help to give us, I guess, an individual sense of being able to make that difference, and will, of course, benefit Australians and the advice community as a whole.
Sure, we might follow the progress or the thread of that view and check in with you in a couple of years' time. Have this roundtable in a couple of years' time and see how our opinions have consolidated or changed. But thank you very much indeed, Catherine. As we throw to you, Andrew, with your take on whether...
Yes, look, I put myself in a pretty similar camp to Phil and Catherine there, which is long-term optimistic, just given the economics, the sort of penetration of advice into the market in general, and therefore the opportunity set there. Shorter term, not really that optimistic that we're going to get much in the way of relief from our parliamentarians, although I really think that obviously there's a level of regulation required, but I certainly feel that the pendulum has swung way too far, and a lot of the stuff we're required to do does add no value to anybody. So it would be fabulous to see some of that unwound. So I think if we can get through the pain of that and maybe get the message across to those that need to hear it, there is the opportunity for great careers there for people in the future. And in my view, what we do for our clients financially is right up there with what doctors and medicos do for their clients from a health perspective. And I don't think there's anything more important after those two professions that anyone does. So I think we're vital for the health and well-being of the community as a whole.
Indeed. Couldn't agree with you more. Actually, it's a fantastic industry in which we all work in our different roles, but we're all in the industry. So thank you very much, Andrew, and best wishes with your continued journey. Good luck with the third generation. I hope that works out okay for you. Thank you. And to you, Adam, there's optimism, but there's realism. There's opportunity, but there's complexity. What's your take, however you want to summarise this conversation from your perspective?
Look, I absolutely agree with the comments. I think Eugene raises a very critical point, and that is, burdens or relief of burdens with respect to complexity and compliance are critically important. I share the positive element moving forward. I think Catherine mentioned the word adapt, and we've seen a number of that with a variety of different advice practices. Those who are really using this extensive period of change to restructure their businesses, perhaps partnering with advisors like Catherine and Andrew, those who are, significantly experienced in the risk advice field, or like Leah mentioned, partnering with a, technical paraplanning firm just to provide those efficiencies from the back office. We think we know that the significant value that advice provides, a number of research, not just domestically but globally, that we've done at Zurich shows that once those clients are in the door, overwhelmingly, the clients love their advisors. They just know the significant value from trust, from knowledge, experience. It's something which is valued and appreciated. So being able to maybe extend that to more people in the community, I look forward to seeing over the next few years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Adam. I'm perhaps throwing one at you at the last minute from left field. Something you mentioned, something was also mentioned by Eugene. There's a group of advisors that feel that life insurers want to cut out the middleman and go direct with their product solutions to the consumer. And then there's the other group of advisors who work very closely and diligently with life companies, and the attitude of life companies appears to be that retail advised life insurance advice is critical and fundamental. Would you mind clarifying from your own perspective?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to comment on that. Look, at our business, we certainly are a diverse life insurance business, investments business, of course, with Group Direct. Our main focus has been and will continue to be in the advice channel. We do understand the significant value that advice brings to the life insurance market in terms of that education overlay and, more importantly, appropriateness in terms of the relevance of a particular product and its suitability to an individual, something which is largely absent from a self-directed approach. So I think that's something which will continue, if not become more important, with the added complexity that this new product world will have. We think the need for specialist insurance advice has never been more important, and that will be our continued view into the future.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that clarification, Adam, and perhaps a good place to finish up. So it is with my grateful thanks, certainly again to Zurich for your support, but to all of you for the clear passion that you've brought to the table. This, I think, has been a great conversation made so by your own contributions. So we're very grateful to you for taking the time and for the contributions you've made, for actually giving opinions, which is pretty important. And I know that what we've talked about today will certainly have value and will hopefully give perspective, give different points of view to those who are going to be watching and listening to what you've had to say today.